One of the questions I see all the time is, who won this trade? Usually see these online. There's a screenshot showing what Team A gave to Team B and what they got in return. Usually there's no context, just players and picks being swapped for each other. And social media demands an answer. It demands a winner. Someone had to win that trade. But there's really only one correct answer to the question, who won this trade? And we'll talk about it next on this week's episode of Dynasty Compass. Welcome to Dynasty Compass. I am your host, Jeff Blaylock, the other Jeff B. from Football Guys. If you've been with me for a little while, or even if you haven't, navigation is a key theme of this show. It's why we use a compass as our logo and our overarching metaphor for Dynasty roster management. Because learning how to read the map, how to orient yourself, how to find the direction you need to go, and then navigate your way through those obstacles, that's all part of being not only a good navigator in our metaphoric sense, but also being a good dynasty manager. Now, for centuries, sailors have used trade winds to help them cross the oceans being very large obstacles in the way of where a sailor is and where a sailor wants to be. Now, these steady airflows have literally powered global trade, although the term itself arose from a Middle English word for path, or for track. And so when we think about these trade winds in the historical sense, they have made some paths or tracks easier to navigate, while others are practically inaccessible because in order to get to them, you must go against the trade winds. Now, in dynasty fantasy football, a different kind of trade is often the easiest path to a destination, and that is a trade with another manager in your league. Now, these particularly are the case for our three preferred directions, which is north, a perennial contender, west, which is a win now situation, and south, which is a total rebuild. Fighting against these trade winds will keep you bottled up in the East, neither a contender nor a rebuilder. If you'll recall, the East is a chip in a chair. It is being somewhere in the middle of the pack with a roster that's not quite good enough to contend for a championship and not quite bad enough to get the number one overall pick. So you get towards the end of the season and it just becomes a let's see what happens. That's what fighting trade winds will do for you. So understanding the theory of trades, like a sea captain understanding how the trade winds work, will make getting to your destination a lot easier and a lot faster than either sailing against the wind or sailing with no plan at all. I've said before, the biggest mistake that dynasty managers make is they make moves without an overall strategy in place. With the strategy in place, it is now time to look out at the map and see where the trade winds can take us. Now, in the cold open, I started with the question, who won this trade? And the expectation that one side will be preferred to the other. But why should that be expected? We have no idea what the trade does to either side. We don't know if the trade moves one side or the other side or both toward their strategic directions. We don't know how each piece of the trade is valued by the people who actually were involved in the trade. We just have names and we have draft picks to judge. And so without context, we can't know if one manager got the better end of a trade or if they fleeced their trade partner or if they're both quite happy or each one believes they happen to win the trade. And the reason for this is that player value isn't fixed. It's relative based on what a manager needs, what another manager has to offer, what a manager is trying to do with their roster, what circumstances are leading up to this trade, and even the personal preferences, players or draft picks or in positions, quarterbacks or wide receivers. Are they looking for next man up? Are they looking for developing talent? What are the managers involved looking for? This is particularly complex in Dynasty, where we are not just talking about this season. Trades in redraft leagues are relatively straightforward. The goal is to strengthen your hand for this year and this year alone, and your only value horizon is this season. So you're looking at what a player is projected to do over the rest of the season, and that's how you make your trade. In Dynasty, we, of course, have multiple seasons to think about this year and future years. And depending on what we're trying to do with our roster, this year or future years may actually become more important. And so thus, the same player can have wildly different values. As of today, Dak Prescott, quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, is the QB7 in Football Guys consensus rest of season rankings. But he's the QB18 in Dynasty rankings. So our rankers clearly are looking at his current season as being more valuable than his future seasons. But that's not the end of it. Dak Prescott is more valuable in superflex formats than he is in one quarterback leagues. He's more valuable if you need a starting quarterback, whether you're playing superflex or one QB leagues. He's less valuable if you have other starting quarterbacks. He's more valuable if you're contending right now. He's less valuable if you're rebuilding. And the same thing applies to draft picks, which truly are the currency of the realm in Dynasty fantasy football. Teams trying to win now should value players who can help them win now over picks that could help them win later. And rebuilding teams have the opposite value equation. They need help later, not now. And perennial contenders have a different balance between them altogether, because they may value players more one year and they may value picks more another, depending on the health of their rosters and what the next couple of seasons look like for them. So we don't know how the trade partners value the players and the draft picks, and we are asked who won this trade. All we can do is apply our own values and judge it that way. But our values are similarly relative. League settings can completely reshape valuations. Scarcity and abundance also reshape these valuations. Just the simple fact of how many players are on a roster can affect the availability of players in the player pool, making them either relatively more expensive or relatively cheaper, depending on the size of the player pool that's left. So, who won the trade? I don't know. I hope who won it, and that's both of them. And that's the only correct answer to the question. Both of them won this trade. Who won this trade? Both of them won this trade. Both of them got things of value in exchange for things of equal or lesser value. And you can still find an edge and extract positive value in trades without hosing the other manager. It's not a zero-sum game when it comes to value, because valuations are quite variable. And that's why there's always going to be opportunities if you know where to look for them. Just like a sailor understanding where and when the trade winds blow. Now, there's several ways that you can find an edge in Dynasty fantasy football trading, and that is the timing of the market. You want to buy dips when you have an injured player, you have a benching, you have cold streak, you have a bad hype, you have a really lousy game, you have a manager who says in the group chat that he's upset with this particular player, he's disappointed, any kind of clue like that a manager is going to be valuing player a little less than before is an opportunity to get that player for value. Likewise, selling high. A player who is on a particular hot streak, has had a breakout week, has training camp buzz behind them, or as in the case this week with Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals being conceivably out for the season. If you happen to have Jake Browning on your bench, he is suddenly now a starting quarterback. He is particularly valuable potentially to other managers, especially the Joe Burrow manager. It's an opportunity to sell him for much higher than you could have sold him 2 weeks ago. And you simply just need to recognize need. You need to look at your league mates' rosters fairly regularly and see if you have someone else's handcuff, someone else's backup quarterback. You've got Jake Browning to their Joe Burrow. You've got Zach Charbonnet to their Kenneth Walker. Who's in line to start next? You have flex running backs to spare and someone needs one. Those are the avenues to pursue to try to get increased value in a trade. But another aspect of this, that seems fairly obvious, but another aspect of it that isn't quite so obvious is that you need to know your trade partners. And you do this by learning from history. Nearly every platform that hosts fantasy football leagues has a history function that tracks transactions going back as far as either the league existed or at least is on the platform itself, and you have an ability to go back and look through time. Every interaction between two managers involving players and draft picks is data about how those managers value those things. Rejected trades from you or trades that you reject show what managers don't value or may not want. Counteroffers reveal what they do want or how far apart you might be in valuation. And accepted trades league-wide will show you about what they agreed to do in the past. So what does that tell you about positional priority? Their willingness to swing big or to stay conservative, how they value draft picks, whether they'll take 2-for-1 type trades, whether they like to keep the trades very tight, one player for one player, or whether they are willing to send 5 or 6 assets to you in exchange for 4 others, whether they're willing to put their cornerstones up on the market, or whether they are merely just trying to maneuver around the edges with the next men up and the developing talents and even a dart throw here or there. Savvy managers are going to keep track of all of these patterns. It's part of reading the map, and it's a key to understanding how you can get value from one of your fellow managers without having to fleece them. Another important key to gaining value in trades is just simply know what's going on in the NFL. Know when players missed practice this week. Know when a particular backup might be more or less valuable than before, and make trade offers on that basis. Now, I did say I think you should do trading without fleecing your fellow manager, but when something is reasonably common knowledge, anyone can follow football Twitter and see that a player missed practice this week. If you use that kind of knowledge and get some additional value because another one of your managers wasn't paying as much attention, that's not fleecing. That's just good business. And a final aspect of being able to get value out of trades is something called arbitrage. This is one of the least understood aspects of fantasy football, especially in Dynasty when we have so many different valuations and time frames and options of things to trade. Mastering arbitrage is the fastest way to get you north toward perennial contention than anything else. It is being able to extract value at every transaction. So what is arbitrage? Well, first of all, it's a really fancy word that isn't used very often because why would you? It's just not something we all need to talk about very often. The technical definition of it is profiting from different prices for the same asset in different markets, which is realized by buying the asset at the lower price in one market and then promptly selling it at a higher price in another market. Typically, this would be applied to things like commodities. The commodities markets are where you can make fairly instantaneous transactions to capture these little bits of value across the globe on a daily basis. That's really not what we're about. Nothing moves that fast in Dynasty Fantasy Football. But if you've ever watched HGTV, this is what on-air personalities call flipping. Except on HGTV, they invest tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars to raise the value of their asset before selling it at an even higher profit. In Dynasty, you don't have to invest a cent. Your trading partner will do that for you. They will lift the value for you just by valuing it differently than you do. And there's no appraisal by a disinterested third party. So the asset can have different values at the same time as part of the same negotiation. It's like buying and selling a house at two different prices at the same time, and that transaction being possible. The problem with arbitrage in fantasy football, much as with flipping in real estate, is there is no second market to sell the asset in. You don't buy a property in one city and then pick it up and plop it down in another to take advantage of the regional price differences in property. The property stays wherever it is. I mean, that's the nature of property. So likewise, you can't trade a player to another league. The player has to stay in this league, in this market. There are the 9 or 11 or 13 or however many other league mates you have. Those are the collection of buyers, and this is the market. So what you're really looking for is a buyer who couldn't deal with the house at the lower price point, but they're willing to pay the higher one. So in the HGTV example, it is someone who can't stomach the idea of a fixer-upper, even though it would be much cheaper, and whatever cost they put into the renovation would still be cheaper than buying it at the higher price. They don't have the stomach for it. They don't have the time. They don't have the resources, but they are willing to pay the higher price once someone else has done that. So how could this possibly happen in Dynasty where everyone is in the same league with the same pool of players? Well, it happens because a manager doesn't have what the original seller is looking for, but you do. So let's look at an example here. We're going to take Team A, Team B, and Team C. So Team A has 3 starting quarterbacks in this Superflex league, including Dak Prescott, who is the oldest and the lowest ranked of them in the rankings. Now, what Team A could use is younger wide receivers, and manager of Team A, being someone who likes to make trades, would really love to have an additional 2026 first-round pick. Team B has an immediate need for a starting quarterback right now because they had Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow is out for the season. To that team, Dak Prescott looks pretty good right now because he is a full-time starter in a pretty good offense. Now, why would you make Prescott available? Wouldn't you need this same quarterback if you were to lose one of yours? Of course, but that's the key difference here is if you are Team A, Dak Prescott is what I would consider to be a next man up. He is not in your regular starting lineup because you already have 2 better options that are there. They are either your cornerstones or your set and forgets. And the only way that Dak Prescott gets into your lineup is if somebody is hurt or if there is a bye week. But now Team B needs a starting quarterback regularly, and so Dak Prescott immediately becomes a set and forget starter for him. So already we can see a valuation difference in that Team B needs the player. You just like having the player. So Team B, knowing that it has to have a starting quarterback to contend, is willing to part with position players, not their top tiers, not their foundational players, not their cornerstones, but they are willing to part with some of the next men up kind of level, their lower level starters, and they're also willing to deal away their highest remaining pick, which in this example is a 2026 second, but they would like a lower pick in return, essentially just trading down in the draft. Now, when we get to Team C, they are a contender. They'd like to remain one, and that manager believes that he needs running back help. Now, you recall from the rookie draft that he remains quite miffed that a trade happened right in front of when he was going to pick, and another manager took Quinson Judkins right out from under him. He is not forgiven that moment. That is still a raw spot for him, and you know this. Team C willing to give up one of their starting wide receivers because he's got several in order to get some running back help. And he is willing to trade down in the 2026 draft, but only by 1 round. So here is the first of the 2 trades that are going to happen relatively quickly in sequence. Team A is going to send Dak Prescott, the quarterback we've been talking about. He's going to send Jack Besh, who is a developing talent receiver, and their 2026 4th-round pick to Team B for Quinson Judkins, the very object of Team C's eye. The wide receiver, Ricky Pearsall of San Francisco, the running back, Woody Marks, a developing talent, and a 2026 2nd-round pick. So Team A has come to the rescue of Team B. Here is your starting quarterback. In exchange, I've got this rookie running back that's going to be more valuable to another manager than he is to me. I've got a young, talented receiver to plug into my lineup, either as a full-time starter or as a next man up. And I've now moved up from the 4th round to the 2nd round of the draft. Once that deal closes, I am going to turn around and reach out to the manager of Team C, and I'm going to offer Judkins, I'm going to offer Marks. I would like to have him, but Team C really could use the running back help, and my 2026 second for Jameson Williams, a set-and-forget starter into my starting lineup, and his 2026 first. Team C agrees to this in part because they really wanted Judkins in the first place. They also like the idea of having Marks as some depth, and they've just simply traded down 1 round from the 1st to the 2nd to get these pieces to their roster. So what's the arbitrage here? Well, Team A has essentially turned Dak Prescott, their 3rd quarterback, Jack Besh, a bench player, and a 2026 4th round into 2 regular starters, Pearsall and Jameson Williams, and picked up that 2026 first. And what's really cool about this is that every manager is happy. Who won the trades? All of them won the trade. But it was Team A who captured the arbitrage because they were able to move lower valued assets to them in exchange for higher valued assets to them because they took advantage of the needs of their fellow managers who valued Team A's lower valued assets higher. And in that equation, Team A walks away with the extra benefits, the arbitrage. If we were to use Football Guys' Dynasty Trade Value chart as of today, and we just assigned those values to the different players and picks that were involved, Team A sent a value of 30 to Team B in exchange for 40. That's a plus 10. And then sent a value of 29 to Team C in exchange for 37. So you can see, even objectively, Team A has won this trade if we measure it only that way. But all the trade partners are quite happy, and they were willing to give up some of this extra objective value in order to achieve their own strategic ends. Now, are these 2 trades that I've been talking about realistic? I think they are, but they're really just intended to illustrate the point. They are based on real trades that were in the Dynasty League football trade database. This is DLF. It's another excellent website with Dynasty content, and they maintain a trade database that lets you see what certain players in trades look like. The bigger point isn't whether the trades are realistic. It's the context of the trade is more important than the rankings or the value charts. Because in this case, Team B and Team C, if they looked at the value chart at all, would see that they were giving up more objective value than they were getting. But because they were getting what they needed, their own value equation was quite different. But so winning the trade is not about who has the higher score. It's whether you improved your team without paying too much relative to how much you needed the improvement. Being able to take advantage of the value fluctuations of assets between one manager and another, between one situation and another, that is how you get yourself to become a perennial contender faster than any other way. There's a lot more we could talk about here. We're actually going to pick up where we left off next week. We're going to talk about more of the mechanics of the trade. But what we're going to end with here is a summary of what we've been talking about, understanding trade value and understanding where your managers, your fellow managers, your league mates are valuing assets is very much like studying the map before you set sail. You don't control the winds, but you can position yourself to benefit what those winds are. Next week, we will shift from studying the map to the actual art of sailing across the globe using the trade winds to help us get to our destination. If you've liked this episode, please let me know. Please like, please subscribe, please share. Please drop me a line that says these episodes are helpful, that you are learning and becoming a better dynasty manager as a result of this. I certainly understand it if you don't want to tell your fellow league mates about me just yet, but please tell everyone else. It's very helpful to me to know that I am not talking into a void, that I'm actually making a difference, even a very small one. Even with just a handful of people, that's enough for me to know that this is a worthwhile exercise for me to be doing. So thank you very much. We will see you next week on Dynasty Compass.